Sawyer, college essay guy here. I'm all about bringing more ease, joy, and purpose into the college application process. Welcome to the podcast where I interview some of the most brilliant minds in this college admissions world. I try and extract their genius, figure out how they're doing what they're doing, or just get their best advice and communicate it to you in simple, easy to follow language and steps. My goal here is to go beyond the basics, and you'll see that's true especially in this episode, figuring out what are the inside things, the things that you may not be able to read on some other website, and bring it to you in a fun way. So, today's guest is Jody Oken. She is rad, as you'll soon see. She's a huge Twitter star. She's got over 150,000 followers, people interested in what she has to say. She worked in the financial aid offices at Occidental, also known as Oxy, and Pitzer. I'll tell you more about her in just a minute. Get your pen and paper ready because on this episode, we talk about the first thing you should do if you receive a financial aid award letter and you're disappointed. Who should make the call to a financial aid office? Is it a student or a parent? You might be surprised at the answer. What you should literally say to a financial aid officer when you call them to make an appeal. Why you shouldn't start off the conversation by just, mentioning, oh, I got this other financial aid offer from this other school. Jody shares her 5 points to cover in an appeal letter, including what tone to take and how long the letter should be, the one thing students should do but don't do, and the one thing parents should do but don't do, and even why do people always pronounce it FAFSA? Just the hard-hitting questions here, folks. Heads up that the sound quality on this podcast is a little funky. It's totally my fault. I messed up the settings. But just like when you walk into a dim room where there's like dim lighting and it takes your eyes a few minutes to adjust, once you listen to it, and I know because I just listened through the podcast again, your ears will get used to it. But the content's great, so I wanted to share it with you. Don't forget to check out the accompanying blog post that I wrote with Jody called How to Write a Great Financial Aid Appeal Letter. All right. That's it. Enjoy the podcast. My guest today is Jody Oken. She's the founder of College Financial Aid Advisors. She's helped thousands of families, I was going to say millions, navigate the financial aid process. Her background includes over 10 years in the financial aid industry. She has firsthand experience working in the financial aid offices at Occidental, Pitzer. She's the brand ambassador for Discover Student Loans. She's an About.com money expert, the About.com money expert, and recently featured as one of the top 30 social influencers. Oh, and by the way, just wrote an Amazon bestseller, Secrets of a Financial Aid Pro. Ladies and gentlemen, Jody Oken. Jody, welcome to the podcast.
And a formal curtsy. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. It's really an honor. I feel like you're one of those humans where we kind of know each other, but kind of don't know each other because most of our interactions are online. So it's awesome and rad and kind of strange to be together in person. What do you do and why do you do it?
What do I do? So I help families understand the financial aid process. So when I started working in financial aid, I felt that there was a huge disconnect between the colleges and the families and the way financial aid worked. And because I come from this college background, I have this passion. So when you hear me talk about it, I'm so passionate about trying to explain this complicated, nerve-wracking system to families so that they can feel more relaxed and breathe. And so that's sort of what drives me. I'll help anyone just understand it. And I've opened so many doors for families. I feel blessed.
Tell us about your book.
My book. So I'm an author, and I'm so humbled when people say, oh my gosh, I just read your book. But I did the project because I really wanted to write an evergreen book. I did not want to write a book, a how-to book. I wanted to write a book of real family stories that have happened in my career, and then give them sort of springboard points of how to start that in middle school, high school, and millenniums. I'm kind of really into this after college experience. And so it was going to be a book that lasts forever, and it was a dream come true, and I love the process. And so I have a book now.
Yeah. What do you feel like you really got right in the book? Like, what do you feel like you nailed?
I want it to be a digestible book, and everyone who's told me that they read it loved the formatting, and that was really key for me. When you're a writer and you're writing a book, you have a specific way of writing, and they thought, the white space and the homework and the things that we did, they said, I read it in one night and it answered all the questions I had, and that is the best feedback I think an author can ask for.
Awesome. So I want to get into, because people might say, well, I have expertise in the financial industry, but financial aid industry is so particular and so perfect for what we're talking about today. I'm going to start off with a really broad question, but what has working 10 years in the financial aid industry taught you?
It's taught me, that there's multi-sides to financial aid. So, as we know, in the United States, there's blended families that come from, have all different kinds of facets. And so there's not one form or one program that fits so many different kinds of families. So it's taught me to be open, listen to everyone's situation and scenario, and to find out how best for them to apply for financial aid at the colleges that their students, whether we have student listeners or parent listeners, just for kind of create plan A for them. And I like that. It's all different.
Right. That's good. It feels that what the college essay feels like is like you kind of don't know what you're getting. Mm-hmm. There are some buckets,
right,
kinds of things, but each person's different.
Yeah.
So today I want to focus on the particular challenge or problem or area of financial aid award letters and appealing those. And then I want to talk to Jody about all sorts of other things and have her give up her best. Her best secrets, you can find them in her book, but I'm going to see if I can get her to give up even more goodies. Let's talk about this. So student A is accepted into their college. They're super stoked. And then they get the financial aid award letter and they go, uh-oh. Right. What do they do? Like, what's your advice to students who have that uh-oh moment in terms of their financial aid award letter?
So I think the uh-oh moment, I'm a fan of breathe. Take a breath, exhale. If that was your first one, if that's the first aid award letter that came in and that was your first admission, I would say celebrate the moment. Just take a minute and then look to see the other letters that are coming in. Depending on your list, the student's list, so if we have student listeners or counselor listeners, depending on the list that they had, they're going to have different kinds of letters. So you're going to want to compare whether they're state schools or public schools and privates to see what's going on. And if they're all relatively the same, then, what needs to be done? Can you go to that school? Has the student had a conversation with the parent or the parent had a conversation with the student to see what's the budget here? And then maybe the question is there money on the table and can we go back to the college?
Got it. So there's even stuff before you pick up the phone and call the college that you can do. And as you mentioned, it's looking at, okay, what do we have?
Right.
What do we have to work with?
Right.
And I imagine that having that information would be useful when it comes to making that call or writing that letter.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the money talk, So in my book, we start off at 8th grade, have you had the money talk? Does the student know, I only have X amount to go to school? Or does the parent say, hey, whatever, we'll make this work because you worked really hard in high school? And I think there's no judging in this. It's just, what are you going to do? Did you fill out the forms right? So all those questions have to happen before you can appeal. And are you going to appeal to all 10 schools or 8 or just your top 3? And what does that look like? So I think there's a lot of questions to be asked beforehand before you can even get to, okay, I'm going to appeal this.
Right. So before we even get to the nuts and bolts of writing the appeal or making the appeal, let's rewind for parents, for students who are a few years before, who are wanting to keep from getting to this moment, right? To avoid having to appeal. What are some things that parents and students can do years before to make sure, as much as they can, that they know pretty much what to expect in terms of the financial aid that they're going to get?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first of all, when the child is born, we can start that far back, open a 529. I think as parents, you and I are both parents, you're going to want to save. So we want to try to save as much as we can. And then once your student is in 8th grade high school, you want to start having that money talk. This is how much we saved. This is about how much, we can afford. And then making sure that they're applying to schools that meet the criteria, not just location, not just size, not just major, but fiscal fit. And so if you've had all those conversations, then you can dive into applying to schools and then applying to financial aid. Did I answer your question?
You totally answered my question.
Okay.
Because what I hear you saying is that fit is more than just, do I like the trees there? Do they
exactly.
have great community? It's like, and also are we going to be able to afford it?
Right.
And how much work can students and parents do to finding that out? Is there a way that they can know 100% for sure how much money they're going to get, or how close can they get, and what tools do you recommend that they use?
Right. So that was the piece I was getting to. So my favorite tool, writing this down, I hope all the listeners are writing this down, net price calculator. So we use a lot of acronyms in financial aid world. So the net price calculator, or the NPC, is what you should be going on. Every college is required to have a net price calculator on their financial aid website or on the college website. Parents, if you're listening, you can stay up all night and do the net price calculator for every college that your student is applying to, and it's anonymous, so no one's going to know, and you can see with your income, your assets, what that college is going to give you, and using, I'm doing air quotes, no one can see me, a ballpark of what to expect to pay that college. And every college, your expected family contribution might be different. So kind of, do all the colleges that your student's going to apply to and use that net price calculator as your prep homework. So I hope you wrote that down.
Pause the podcast if you haven't written that down. So they can do the net price calculator homework. And then even if, let's say, the most prepared parent has gone through the steps and has calculated it to the penny, are there times when parents are sometimes still surprised with how the numbers come out?
100%. Parents and families, financial aid is a very chatty topic. It is in the news all the time. We are talking about it all the time. And parents and students and counselors think that it's going to go one way, but sometimes it just goes the opposite way. There is a federal formula. So when you fill out the free application for federal student aid, there's a federal formula that takes into all the consideration of the components and spits you out. This is what your expected family contribution, this is what you can get. If you're filling out a CSS profile, that formula is not public. So you don't exactly know. So you're going to need to kind of work through it to decide, what's going to happen. And, I heard Johnny gets a free ride, but maybe Johnny didn't get a free ride. Maybe Johnny got a lot of loans and you don't really know. So I think families are always surprised on what really happens, and maybe they should have got more money.
So who should appeal, Jody? Is it everyone? Are there certain people or certain circumstances where people shouldn't appeal? Talk to me a little bit about that.
So because we have early FAFSA now, which means that the FAFSA and the CSS profile launch on October 1st, you're using prior year tax return. So the family that should appeal is, one, maybe the tax return prior is going to be different than the tax return that's going to be actual when that student starts school the following fall. Make sense? So let's say the income decreased, expenses increased for something, a family medical situation, someone moved out of the house, someone maybe passed away. So anything around that family should appeal.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that if there was a big shift, if there is especially something that would say, hey, we don't have as much money as it looks like we have,
right,
definitely should appeal.
Definitely.
Okay. So let's get into this then. How do you appeal? How does one appeal? Give us your best tips for how to do a great appeal. Is it a letter? Is it a phone call? Walk us through it.
Okay, so it could be a phone call. So if you're not shy, so for all of our listeners today, if you're not shy and you're at the financial aid office and you feel like sitting down and talking to the financial aid staff, A+. I think that's great. The more they can see you, talk to you, see your student, I think that's a great thing. If you can't get there, give them a call. If you're more of a calling person and you need to hear a voice still, I would do that. I have some families who say, can I please just send an email? I don't want to call. I don't want to be there. Whatever your comfort zone is, contact them. They want to help if they can. And if they can't help, they're pretty much going to say, I'm so sorry, we can't help. But you got to get the process started. And the first thing is start the dialogue. Hey, I got my financial aid award letter, and I want to let you know what's going on in our family that might be different, that you don't know from the forms I signed or sent in. Make sense?
Great. And so who should be the one to do that? Is it something that mom or dad should do, or is it something that a student should do? Does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. If the family has not brought the student into their financials and that student isn't able to articulate those conversations, then the family should do it themselves. And it doesn't matter whether, mom, dad, or whoever does it, but mostly the custodial parent needs to do it.
Got it. And so walk me through that phone call. Like, say I'm somebody who is kind of terrified of making phone calls like this, but I would be willing to do it because it feels like the stakes are so high because I really, really want to go to whatever school. What do I say in that phone call?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Okay, love role playing. So we're dialing. Okay, I have the phone by my ear now and be like, hi, I'm Jody, and my daughter, Bobby, she just applied to your school, and she is so thrilled she got accepted to the school. But, it's just really hard. We got our financial aid award letter, and the first thing is I don't understand it. So is there anyone there who can help me understand? Like, what's a loan? What's the free money? Pause. Wait. Let the person answer. That person's going to tell you something. Either write us a letter, or I'm happy to discuss, let me get Bobby's file, and then they'll go ahead and tell you, this is what you got, and this is why you got it. And you're listening, taking copious notes the whole time. Once you hear the answer, feel free to say, you know what, I might need a minute to metabolize this. Can I just think about it, or talk to my spouse about it, ask some questions, and then can I call you back? Or if you have questions right away, you can say, well, what about this? And they'll tell you. They will clearly tell you what the next step is, or the process in that office. Write that down and do that next step.
That sounds super simple. But it also sounds super smart. The pause. Talk to me about the pause. Why is the pause so important?
Because the pause is important because parents have an agenda of what they want to say, and I want them to take a minute to listen to what's being said to them, because financial aid offices, they get audited. They have a certain process that they have to do with every file folder that they get on their desk. Like, I worked at Oxy, I have 25 file folders. I have to go through step 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it gives you a minute to take in and sort of roll it around your head and hear what they have to say to move to the next step. Because you may think the next step is one thing, but they may give you another step, which might get you further in your appeal.
So in this imaginary phone conversation, give us some really good don'ts. Like, what are some things that parents said or students said to you that put you off? Yeah, give us some what not to do.
My first don't is don't compare schools right off. So please don't call and say, University A gave me X amount of dollars, and your university didn't give me the same amount. That is going to be put off to me.
Why? Why is that?
I have to evaluate packages as per the rules in my campus. And so we evaluate on certain criteria in my campus. And if your student really doesn't want to come here and wants to go to that one and you're shopping around, I might not need shoppers in my group or my class for this year. I might want to be looking for someone who really wants to come here because. So it sort of depends on the conversation. Parents are feeling me out, and I am feeling them out too.
And how often are parents actually speaking with the person who could make the difference? Are there times when people would call you, and whether they knew it or not, that you were the person who had the power to actually make that decision?
So that's a great question. So it depends on, it's school by school. So it depends on the director. So every director, as you can imagine, there's regulations and rules that come down from the Department of Ed. Every director is made up of, some are very black and white, some are gray matter, some are a rainbow of colors. So it depends on how they run their office. Some directors will only do the packaging, and they don't let the staff members, so then the staff members would then have to ask the director to give the appeal. Other offices that I've worked in, the staff member is able to give the appeal without asking the director. So it depends on how that office operates, and there's no way of finding out ahead of time.
But it sounds like either way, the person that you're speaking with probably has some say or some sway over whether or not you...
Right. So, perfect example, I'm at Oxy, I talk to Family A. Family A is pulling at my heartstrings. It looks like it's all theirs appeal. I go in to director, I say to director, hey, I have Family A in my office, and here, they had this happen and that happen, and, would you consider? And so she's going to, maybe he or she will look at me and say, hey, Jody, what's your thinking on it? And so, yes, I could have that conversation, and so could the person who works next to me. She might go into the office and say, hey, listen, this family's looking, but, I don't think they really need it. And then the director could then say to her, okay, well then that one's a no, and we'll give Jody the yes. So it works both ways depending on who's analyzing the folder.
Interesting. So it sounds to me like, and you didn't say this, I'm making this up, but you're kind of like developing a relationship, at least temporarily, with this human on the other end of the line. And one of the things you maybe shouldn't do is saying, hey, we're looking around. And because I could imagine how if somebody, if I went on a date with somebody, and someone said, so what have you got to offer me because I've got this other offer?
Right.
Outback sounds a little creepy, but I've got this other offer. Yeah, I might feel that way. I might feel like, well, then you should probably go see about that.
And let's put the caveat in that, let's say this student is someone they want really bad. We do have the software that says something to the effect of, this student, we want the student, or meets certain criteria or something. So we are able to look at all the components, through admissions and everything to analyze the student and the family. But I would hold off unless the school actually says to you, and so let's kind of give the direct answer to, if the school says to you, who gave you what and what did they give you, then give it up.
Cool.
But if they don't, then I would be vague.
And are there any situations where that could hurt them, where the student revealing that information, it could actually get them to get less money? Or is it usually a good thing to reveal that information, usually helpful? In other words, does that make sense? Yeah,
I was just going to answer. I mean, and so that's a question I think across the board that parents, so once you're given the money, you are given the money. So once, it's not going to be taken away unless maybe your taxes were different or something happens down the line, but they're going to say that's your offer, that's all we can do. So it won't hurt you because that's your offer. And so down the line, you should be okay. Did I answer your question?
Totally.
Okay, yeah.
Are there any other things that you can think of that might, if you were the financial aid decision maker, put you off and make you maybe push a little less hard for a particular family based on experiences maybe that you've had?
I actually am not, I guess I've seen so many families, I'm not really put off, but I am detail oriented. So I have seen it all and then some. So I will make sure that whatever a family is saying to me, that they can back it up, or that they have proof of it, or that it follows a particular line. So I understand there's different scenarios in everyone's life. Life happens, and I'm open to hearing it, and I just want to make sure that, if you're going to tell the college or tell me as a staff member, that you have proof that it's happened.
Are there ever situations where it's useful for the family to and this is a tricky area, where they need to get their story together? In other words, were there ever situations, here's maybe a better way of asking that, where you sense that people had really put together a story and sort of, I don't want to say lied, but fabricated stuff to sort of make things seem more extreme than they were?
Okay, so I think that's a great question, and I do have a particular, let's just say, conversation that I would give back to a family. A family wants to get the most amount of money that they possibly can. Some families like to position themselves. I definitely don't work with any kind of families that do that kind of thing, but I want families to understand that if you're doing something to get yourself more aid, sometimes you end up getting yourself more loans in the long run than really getting that free money. So concentrate on what really needs to be done. Tell your story, tell it how it is, and go from there. That is the best advice I have.
Great. So what are some, just jumping off that, what are some good do's? Like, what are some things that people should have prepared, say, coming into that conversation, the appeals conversation?
So have all your documents ready, have your tax return, have any letters that back up your conversation of why you had a loss of income, or maybe someone passed in your family, or, someone's very sick and you have medical expenses. Bring those in. Go ahead.
So just to clarify, people should have documented medical expenses. Mm-hmm. Should they have paycheck stubs? These kinds of things.
Yeah. So if you're using the current tax season or the past tax season is what you get awarded on, and now in the current tax season you get your W-2 and you're like, oh my gosh, I made $20,000 less. Show that to them. The colleges have been told from the Department of Ed that once that new tax return has been completed, they can make an adjustment as long as they can show proof. So that's a good thing to know. So if you did make less money in a considerable amount, then let the college know. They're going to be happy to help you if they can, and you have proof of that.
Great. So you've walked us through the phone call. Walk us through, let's say the school says, after that second pause, says, put it in an email, send it to this address. Uh-huh. Walk us through a financial aid appeal letter or email. What goes into that?
Okay, so I think it's just like a 5-part email. Dear Financial Aid Office, daughter is so excited to be a groundhog, and she's been waiting to be a groundhog since she was born. 2, we completed our financial aid documents, but we think that there's some information that you might need to know that's happening in our family that we weren't able to write on the form.
Ooh, I like what you did there. So let's just recap. So 1, there's like some sense of like, it's positive, and there's like a sense of gratitude and excitement. So we're starting off on a good foot here.
Right.
And then I love the phrasing in part 2, there's some information you might want to know. So you're kind of piquing the curiosity.
Right.
So do you recommend that students get really explicit right there and say, I'm writing, to send an appeal? Or do you think it's okay to be a little bit more vague? Hey, here's some stuff you might want to know.
So I'm all about however you write. Like, use your tone of voice. Your tone is going to be different than my tone. Like, I write in bullets. I'm sort of a number girl. I don't write in complete sentences. But some people want to elaborate. I would try to keep it to 1 page. Okay? But be specific. Say, my income was this, and now it's this. Or, my spouse is sick, and this is how much we pay. So be specific. Great. In paragraph number 2. Paragraph number 3 can be a wind-up paragraph or additional. Maybe there's 2 problems or 3 paragraphs. And then the last paragraph is, please let us know if there's any documentation or anything else you need from us. We're happy to provide. And please also let us know what the next steps are. We don't know. And thank you very much. She really wants to be a groundhog.
How specific, in parts 3 and 4, how specific do you recommend that people be? Do you say, would it be, we just basically need more money? Or, we were awarded X amount of dollars, but given, would someone get as specific as saying, for example, this is how much money we made last year, this year, it's now this much.
Exactly.
Here are the reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't talk about the award, talk about this is how much we made last year, and this is now what our income is when, Johnny is starting school in the fall. We changed it from Bobby to Johnny, but I hope everyone's keeping up. So yeah, it's exactly, I made this and now I'm making this.
Right.
My medical expenses were 0, but now they're 30,000.
It sounds like a pretty straightforward, just give us the facts.
Yeah.
Is there anything besides the facts that you feel like can help folks in terms of their, in terms of making their case? Or is it more of just sort of like, hey, just tell them the real deal and hope for the best.
Yeah, my favorite, I think I've said that like 10 times on this podcast. Like, my favorite thing is, so here's another one of Jody isms, which is, I like to keep all the doors open. So if your student has applied to 10 schools and they've done everything they can to gain admissions into that college, and you're helping with financial aid, or counselors who's listening, or students, if you've done everything and you can open all the doors, this is the one time where colleges are actually going to close the door. No one else is going to close the door. So you want to make sure you've done everything and that you never look behind and say, oh, shucks, I should have, applied or asked for more money. Just ask. I mean, they're going to say no if they can't, or they're going to say yes, and here's how you do it. And I want to pivot on that and say, when they say do this, if you can, then you might receive more money. But if you ignore it and don't do it, then that might be the piece where they gave you the opportunity to follow through on these steps, and you need to follow through.
Talk to me about timeline. When should folks appeal? And when the school says you need to do X, so these are two questions.
Oh gosh.
How much time, like how soon should students act on that? So first question, when should students appeal? How soon after they get their appeal letter? Can they kind of...
Their financial aid award letter, yeah. Okay, so I think that's a great question. So now that we're in early FAFSA, things are... What I'm saying now is we're in a change year, so it kind of might flush out a little bit. But the minute you get your financial aid award letter, or several of them, let's wait till you get a few so you can kind of see how it's going. You can go ahead and appeal if you have something to appeal. If it's just because you feel like you want more money, that might not work. You have to be able to show that something changed from the time you filled out the forms. So the correct answer is ASAP. So appeal as soon as possible and follow all the directions they're telling you.
My sense is that when somebody in this situation, when a financial aid officer says, you need to send us this, that there's a ticking clock. Is there a ticking clock?
There's a ticking clock in the sense that, everyone has to commit by May 1st. So May 1st is the ticking clock. So if, let's say, you're a California person who's waiting for the UCs, who's ever listening to this, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and they roll out on March 28th, and you have to commit on May 1st, that school is working as hard as they can on appeals. They're having meetings every day to see if, they're going to accept appeals. But let's take the UCs, for example. They don't accept appeals unless you commit there. So you have to decide, okay, I'm going to go there, but I still might need an appeal, but that's not going to be looked at till you commit there. So there's all kinds of different pieces to the puzzle that are working, and the first step, let's take it a step back, is the phone call to ask, what are your steps? What do I do? How do I do this? I need help.
Does it matter what other supplemental information or should I include a cool video of me like dancing with my friends, or should I make sure that the financial aid office knows that I won this recent regional event? In other words, I'm already into the school, but do outside things that I've done in the last few months, do those count ever? Or is that ever going to get me more money?
Yeah, so they're completely separate. So if you can imagine, so at Occidental, the admissions office is in this beautiful building that's lovely with couches and TVs and cookies and juice, and it's lovely on the hill, and it's great in California. And then financial aid, we're in the basement in the back of the campus. So we don't have windows. So when we find out the admitted students, usually it's just a list, and we have a formula to follow. So videos and that kind of stuff might work more in the admissions section, but for us, it's strictly formula, numbers, grinding in that sense.
Yeah, because I worked with a student last year who appealed a decision. In the past couple of years, there have been a handful of students who have had great reasons to appeal an admissions decision and have gotten in, bent over backwards and created the videos. But what I'm hearing is it's going to be about the numbers.
Yeah. It's going to be about the numbers and sort of what's happening in your family's fiscal situation.
Yeah. Is it okay for me to appeal to just absolutely all my schools? Can I just send in the same letter or make the same call to 8 or 10 schools?
You could. I mean, there's no reason you can't. I think, we're going to probably review that some schools won't accept them. Some schools will say you have to commit. But you can ask. Maybe a rule of thumb is if you're appealing a state school versus a private school, at the state level, you might not be receiving, or they might not take that into consideration because maybe there's not a lot of money to be had there, but maybe a high ticket private, like a 60 or 70,000, might be able to do something. So you could do it across the board. I always try to encourage families, pick the top 3 or pick the top 5. You should be weeding down at this point. And I think you might agree with me that students, when they filled out their admissions or wrote their beginning essay, was the summer of their junior rising into senior year, hopefully. They're now 6 months more mature. And so they see things in a different way. They might have loved that school before, but now they might love another school. So really kind of hone in on parents, helping students to sort of, give us your top 5 kind of thing.
Really great advice. What's the worst thing that could happen if I appeal? I could imagine a student going, being afraid that if they ask wrong or something, that they're going to get rejected, that they're going to rescind. Has that ever happened?
No, that's really never happened. So the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say no. And really, the worst thing that's going to happen is not the conversation that the college has with the student or the family. It might be what the parents have with the student. So maybe the worst thing is they said no, and really you guys can't afford that school and you can't go there. And the reality of that hopefully has been dealt with, several years before this, that, we aren't going to be able to afford a $60,000 school unless they give us $20,000 and make it lower than a public university in your state. So them saying no, we kind of have to get used to comfortable in the state that this is what it is. This is how financial aid works, whether we like it or not. This is how it is now, so we have to do it this way.
I'm asking you one more question.
So you said that was the last one.
I know. I lied. Any advice that you would give for a student or a family who's gotten that no? They've appealed and they've gotten the no. What do you say to those people?
You have to decide. I mean, this is the time to decide. And this is back to my conversation before, which is, if this becomes your baby, or this was always your baby, and you guys are going to make things work no matter what, and that includes this conversation about loans, then I want you to be an educated borrower. I want you to understand the terms. I want you to understand that this is times 4 or times 5 if you're in a 5-year program, or it takes 5 years to graduate from the school that you're picking. So understand what this purchase that you're making and be a responsible consumer.
Great. So in terms of financial aid 101, Jody has spent so much time thinking about and dealing with that I'm not even going to deal with that on this podcast. I'm going to link to it in the show notes so you can see a really quick, the terms that she mentioned. You can go through that and figure out exactly what you need to do. So I'll send you links to that and resources. While Jody is here, I want to ask her some advanced questions. So one of the things I'm curious about, Jody, is what is something that students don't do that you can't believe they don't do, that they should definitely do, and as much as you say it, they still don't do it, in terms of financial aid, in terms of this, a college application process?
So the number one thing I want students to do is get email savvy. Learn to answer your emails, open your emails, go to your student portal. Once you send in that admission application, you have a student ID and you have a password. Get that portal activated. That is how the college is going to communicate to you. And if you say, I didn't get that email because you aren't in the habit yet, please get in the habit. That's the number one thing that holds up financial aid.
I want to put in a plug for, have you heard of Dashlane?
Tell me.
So Dashlane, and there are other services like this, it's one of those that kind of stores all your passwords in one place on the computer, so you just click it and it basically, is an add-on for your browser and will allow you to just automatically put passwords in. So if you enter a password once you've got your master password, it just kind of puts everything in. So it takes off the burden of having to do that. And there are many of those out there like that. Okay, great. So getting email savvy. What about for parents? What's something that parents have to do and most parents don't do it?
File your tax return early. and make sure that you keep all documents in a safe file. I'm sort of file obsessive, so have a safe file that has all the documents that you're going to need for the first year and then for all those years after. So you're going to get a file for freshman year, a file for sophomore year, a file for junior year and senior year, and if you have a victory lap, that's a file for that year.
Awesome. Jody, why do people always pronounce it FAFSA instead of FAFSA?
Because it's weird. Sometimes you have to, like, I make a mistake all the time. Like, I did a video one time with Zinch and Chegg, and I had to say it 25 times fast. It's hard to put the F in front of the S, and, like, you get kind of, so then you'll notice when do you guys notice how fast I talk? I never take a breath, right? So that's a Jody-ism. So that's when I slow down and I go, free application for federal student aid. I slow myself down because it's tough.
If parents make a lot of money, should they still apply for financial aid?
Sure, why not? I mean, they have to decide. So a lot of money is one thing. So we're not going to really talk about on the podcast like what a lot of money is. But some parents will say to me, hey, Jody, listen, I don't want to change my lifestyle. I want to make payments because, every college has a payment plan. So you can make payments. And I just want to kind of do this on my own time. So if that's the case and you do want to take out a Parent Plus loan, the Department of Ed owns the free application for federal student aid. So in order to take out those loans, and we're certainly not pushing loans on this, podcast, but we're saying if that's how you want to do it, then you have to fill out the form in order to make the payments the way you want it to be.
Talk to me about this IRS tool.
Oh man, it's going so well. Early FAFSA, I'm a fan. Prayer hands emoji, everything, thumbs up. I was a fan. I'm still a fan. Actually, I'm still a fan. I'm bummed. The IRS tool was one of the selling points for early FAFSA because parents and families would have their FAFSA done. They were able to link to the IRS, pull their information in. Their FAFSA would then become verified. And what that means, let's take a step back, what that means for colleges like Occidental, we'll just use them as an example. Sorry, Oxy, I love you. But we'll use them as an example. We're a hard copy school, so we have to get everyone's tax returns and verify that the parents had done it. But now that the IRS was doing it for us, it cut down on a lot of work. But the IRS tool is broken, and it is broken from now until the end when commit day is May 1st. What that means for families is, number one, I'm going to give you tips, you guys, so you can write this down while you listen because I know you're super coordinated. So the one thing is you're going to have to put in your information, tax information, in a manual way, just type it in. And then you may have to send your tax return to the school, and you may need to order an IRS transcript. So you just Google it, order IRS transcript for the year that you're applying for. And so that's all it means. The IRS found out that there was a lot of identity theft out there, and the tool, was not safe. So they had to shut it down.
Gotcha. So you mentioned that May 1st is commitment day. Should students commit before that, or when should students commit? Is it April 30th, or what should students consider before fully committing to a school?
Okay, so there's 3 things I would say. Hopefully I stay on my 3 tasks. 1, if that's your school, you went early decision, you got to commit. Okay. Number 2, if you're still comparing award letters, you might hold off on committing because if you're going to talk to the school, if you already commit, they probably aren't going to change your financial aid award letter because they know you want to go there. Number 3, I am a huge fan of admitted student days. We talked earlier about how a student fills out their college application for admission the summer before their high school senior year. That's 6 months. They are 6 months older in the spring. And admitted students days, that's when they bring out the big marketing things. They show you all their colors. That's where the parents go one way and the students go another way. And if you can't make it to the admitted student day of the college because of traveling or expense and you're applying to a school far away, my favorite secret tip is regional events. So many parents, like if you live in one county and you're super close to another county, you can go to that regional event and see what other students were admitted in your counties that are planning on maybe attending that school. You do not need to commit until May 1st, so you can hold off as long. That money is going to sit there until you send in your deposit. So go to admitted student days. They're so fun. They're fun for staff. You meet the dean of students. You see if your people are there and that's where you want to be, and maybe you buy a t-shirt.
Okay, Jody, give us some tips for filling out the FAFSA.
The first tip is go to that site. So go to, it's fafsa.ed.gov. So that's a site you want to be on.
And by the way, are there other sites that are similar but are not that site?
So there are other sites that are similar that might have another dot something after them. So don't go to those sites. So
Give it to us one more time, just to make sure.
fafsa.ed.gov. That's where you want to be. That's where your home is, okay? And like I said, you want your file folder that has your bank statements, your tax returns, W-2s, 1099s, all of that. Should take you 25 minutes flat. You should, before you start, go to FSA ID Create. The student needs a login and a password, an FSA ID, and one of the parents needs a FSA ID username and password. So you go on to the site, as I'm typing and you can't see me, and you put in the student's FSA ID, put in their password, you log in, you answer all the demographics, you answer questions about the family, you make sure you count how many people live in the household. It's only students who are under the age of 24 and don't already have their bachelor's degree. So how many people live in the household, how many people are attending college. When they talk to you about your assets, you do not include your house or your retirement. You only include mutual funds, stocks, bonds, and this is a great tip, you guys. If you put your cursor in the box, a help menu will drop down and tell you exactly what you need to put in that box. So go for it. They also have live chat. I'm a big fan of that. So while you're doing it, you could be live chatting someone. If they ask you about your business assets, if you don't have over 100 employees, you do not need to fill in that question, but put your cursor there, read the criteria, and see if it applies to you.
Good ones. What is the CSS profile? What is it? Why do some schools require it? Why do others not require it?
Yeah, so the CSS profile is located on the College Board website, and we're all familiar with College Board because maybe your student has taken the SAT or maybe not, but College Board holds this form. It's a 16-page document where they ask all kinds of questions. They want to know about your house, your family members. They want to know about your business, all the siblings, what schools they attend. And that gives them the ability, maybe a selective private school or some other private schools, gives them the ability to use university money and federal money to award your student. So that kind of segues into a part where we talk about, should I apply to that expensive school? What about that $60,000 school? Well, if you can use the FAFSA and the CSS profile and apply to that school and maybe bring that school's price down that's lower than a public school, then maybe that becomes, a point where maybe I do want to go to that school. So don't be afraid of the marked up school, because sometimes it's marked up and it can get marked down by using the CSS profile and the information that it requires.
So, Jody, it's show and tell time, and this is the chance for each of us to share one practical or useful resource in our lives. Jody, what have you got? What have you brought for show and tell?
Show and tell, mindfulness. So starting each day by yourself, with yourself, setting an intention that everything that's happening in your life is, you have the choice. So I get up, I do Ashtanga yoga every day, and that brings me to a mindful place. that I can just kind of walk through life and sort of let it happen. So,
What makes Ashtanga yoga like the right yoga for you? Because I know there's so many out there.
it's peaceful. You practice on your own. It's not a lead class that's taught. And so you're doing the routine by yourself. And so you're doing, not being interrupted in your thoughts. And so for me, that's really good when I have a busy day to just have that hour and a half or 2 hours in the morning where it's just peaceful and it's my time. And when I'm done, I'm able to just be me throughout the whole day.
Cool. So my show and tell is an app called Headspace. You
Oh
know
my
this app?
gosh. No, tell me.
Oh, it's great. So it's a simple app, and
Uh-huh.
it's a meditation app, and it teaches you in just a
Uh-huh.
few minutes a day how to meditate. So
Really?
if anybody out there is like, yeah, I've heard about this meditation thing, but I don't know if it's for me, I'm not really into it, there's a guy who created an app called Headspace. Check it out. It's really easy. It's like, I think the first day is like a minute or two. And he's got a really cool, chill voice and cool accent.
Uh-huh.
And he walks you through this like 10-day process. It's free. And so for folks who are interested in getting into meditation or just seeing what it's about, I recommend it.
Wow.
He's also given, and I'm forgetting his name, but I'll link to it in the show notes. He also gives a really great TED Talk where he kind of sets up the value of meditation and how it can change our brains and transform our lives. So Headspace, the app, je recommend.
I'm totally downloading that.
If there's one thing that you'd like students or parents or even counselors and teachers to remember that you said, what is it?
There's life after college. It's not all about where we get in the first day of college, but life goes on and it happens. And so enjoy it. It's going to go by fast, and don't blink because it's going to go by so fast, and more wonderful things are going to happen too.
So Jody, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
That's the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're not already subscribed, feel free to click subscribe so you can get more fantastic podcasts. And if you're not signed up for my email list, sign up, because I send out free resources like this all the time. And you can do that right at the bottom of the collegeessayguy.com homepage. So that's it. I hope you have an awesome day. As always, stay curious.